Hi, everyone. My name is Curleen Jean-Louis. I'm an entertainment attorney, and I'm going to give an update regarding the federal criminal trial of Sean Combs. Today's actually day 19 of the trial, and Jane Doe, this is her, I believe, second day of testifying. We also understand that over the weekend, Sean Combs' team filed a motion for a mistrial. So Sean Combs' team was able to demonstrate, while my understanding is Bongalin or Bonga was on trial. This is somebody who appears to be Cassie's friend, and she also procured rugs for Cassie and Sean Combs. She testified that Mr. Combs allegedly dangled her over a balcony, but the team was able to demonstrate that the days on which she alleged his defense team was able to demonstrate that on the days she alleged that he could have potentially done this, he wasn't even in the Los Angeles area. He was in New York, and they were able to produce receipts. So his team's like, she perjured herself. The government should have known that she perjured herself, but they still allowed her testimony to go forward, and they requested a mistrial. Now, the judge said because the government has not been able to, or has not yet been able to address or provide a response, they wouldn't kind of rule on it at this time. However, the judge is giving the government or the prosecution time to respond to the defense's request for a mistrial. This is not the first mistrial that the defense has requested in this case, but you have to understand that the defense has to preserve the record in case the verdict doesn't go the way they intend. They have to preserve the record for appeal. So they have to bring up these issues now. So if that case does get appealed, they can show, hey, we brought it up on the lower level. Because for most issues, if you don't bring them up on during the trial or on the lower level, they're deemed to be waived. So they have to what's called preserve the record, so to speak. So Jane Doe, a lot of individuals are speculating as regards her identity. She did mention in her first day of testimony that she had a child with a celebrity who did not care too much for Sean Combs or Diddy. A lot of folks made the inferences. And what's interesting about this case is that a lot of what has played out in court, folks have already observed in real time because Sean Combs and a lot of individuals involved in this case are very popular. So folks were able to piece together, certain bits of her testimony and figure out who she may be. Also, although the sketch artist has, so I'm just going to adjust this here. Although the sketch artist has covered her face again because this is playing out. It played out in real time, kind of like in the public sphere for folks, based on the sketch artist's depiction of her image, even though her face was blurred. Based on her testimony, a lot of folks have been able to surmise who it may be. What's interesting enough is that reports are saying that her attorney is in the courtroom, and it came out on testimony that Sean Combs, Diddy, is actually paying for her attorney, which may have caught some folks by surprise because she's testifying against him, so to speak, concerning the relationship. Diddy is paying for her attorney. Her attorney's in the courtroom, and my understanding is that there was some concern regarding folks so-called leaking her identity. So her attorney was in the courtroom as well, and she's also testifying. A lot of folks, even if they're not being charged, they'll have an attorney in the room while their attorney present, just so that they don't incriminate themselves. Although I'm pretty sure that Miss Jane Doe may have been granted some type of immunity deal for her to testify at trial. So I'm gonna go ahead and read the transcript. Shout out to Inner City Press, and just kind of go through what happened today, day 19, and let's make sure that I get this correct. So the her testimony resumed today, and today was the final day of testimony, of direct testimony. So direct testimony is if the government calls a witness or if the defense calls a witness, they're allowed what's called direct testimony. And then so if the government brings forward this witness, the defense is allowed to conduct what's called direct testimony, and then the defense conducts what's called cross-examination, so they're able to question her based on their testimony. So my understanding is that tomorrow the defense will begin cross-examination of Jane Doe. It says here 9:18 a.m. Jury being brought in. Again, shout out to Inner City Press. The judge says, all rise. Jane, you are still under oath. Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey says, good morning, Jane. The Assistant U.S. Attorney says, Jane says, good morning, Miss Comey. Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey says, publish this photo to the jury. So what they did is that when they say publish, it means essentially show the picture to the jury, but they did not show what was on the screen to the public gallery. So only the jury saw this part. And Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey says, who is this? Jane says, this is Sean's security. And Assistant U.S. Attorney said, and this, again, referring to the picture that was published to the jury, but not to the gallery. And she says, Sean's deputy butler. They asked, the Assistant U.S. Attorney asked, who did you call ATL? Jane says, the entertainer Sly, because he lived in Atlanta. The Assistant U.S. Attorney says, your message to Sean, what is it about? What was it about? Jane said, my trip to New York in 2023. He wrote, send me some SHIT of you being bad. Jane then says, then Sean says, I got the phones. Just sent me what I don't have. Don't say no to me, please. And then Assistant U.S. Attorney says, what did you write? Jane says, I wrote, you are traveling with our phone. And Assistant U.S. Attorney said, you mean not Sean's two main phones? Jane said, yes, his assistants had access to those. Jane says, I wrote, you are using this to get your DICK hard for someone else. Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey says, and he said, what did you say? Jane says, I wrote, I'm not coming to New York. You just want me there for a hotel binge. So this is something I think is interesting because before this case even started, the government characterized, or it has been characterized a lot in the media, that these, what Jane Doe refers to as hotel nights or debauchery nights, were quote unquote freak offs. So I think it's interesting that all this energy was placed on characterizing these events that happened, at least between him and Miss Ventura, as freak offs. He gave a different name with Jane Doe. They were called hotel nights or debauchery nights. So it's interesting how that event is rebranded in their relationship. But anyways, she said, I'm not coming to New York. You just want me there for a hotel binge. And the Assistant U.S. Attorney said, why did you say that? And then Jane said, I saw a podcast. So Academics, who is a popular streamer, blogger, whatever you want to call it, journalist, he made a point and he said a lot. He believes that, this is allegations again, he believes, or he has stated, let me say that, allegedly, that when certain folks saw other women being treated better than them, that caused them to get upset. And he was referring in particular to Sean Combs' relationship with Caresha Brownlee, who's popularly known as Young Miami. And, my thoughts or theory around this is that Sean Combs enjoyed a roster of women around him. And he had different relationships with each woman on the roster. But even through Jane Doe's testimony, she says that she was dating Sean from 2021 to 2024, up until his arrest, which was I was not expecting that. And then, she also testified that he's still paying her rent to this day. And then she says on day 19 that he's the one who's paying for her attorney. So it appears that they were in relationship up until the time of his arrest in connection with the charges at issue in this case. Allegedly, Mr. Combs told her up front, you're not the only one, baby. I have a team, okay? You're part of the lineup, but you are not the only one. Allegedly, or she stated that she was okay with this. And it seems that she's okay with this up and until she sees pictures with him on social media with other women. Okay. It seems that when she saw other women enjoying certain perks that she was not enjoying, that would trigger her and she would get upset. And so AUSA Assistant United States Attorney Comey says, why did you say that? And Jane says, I saw a podcast. For the folks, again, who follow Sean Combs publicly, we know that Caresha Brownlee had a podcast on Revolt TV. We know Sean Combs at that time was chairman, or at least involved with the leadership of Revolt TV. So I'm not sure if that's the Caresha Please podcast that she's referring to, but Jane Doe said, I saw a podcast. And so again, it seemed like Sean Combs had a starting lineup. He had a rotation of women that he would be involved with, because we also heard Cassie say that Gina was involved, that she was jealous of Sean Combs and Gina Quinn's relationship. I believe Jane Doe referenced Gina as well in throughout her testimony as well. And we all know that he was publicly involved with Carisha Brown Lee. Again, she said they go together real bad. He said he was single. So it appears that he had friendships, relationships with a number of women, but there would be a main one who would be more so public facing, and then he had other women in the background. And it appears that Jane Doe wanted to reap more of the benefits that she saw other women enjoying, that she wasn't able to reap. So she said, I saw a podcast, and then Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey says, what about? And then Jane Doe says, about Sean bragging about having X for 48 hours straight on a yacht trip to an island near Miami. Now, again, if you just follow them publicly, you know that he and Miss Brownlee have talked about going to Love Island and things of that nature. So this may, again, be her viewing an episode of Carisha Please, because it was a very popular and viral podcast, and they had a very viral conversation as well. And so the Assistant U.S. Attorney said, when did the podcast air? Now, Jane Doe says, a month after Sean said he'd take me on that yacht trip. Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey says, what had Sean said he'd do with you on this yacht trip? And then Sean Combs' attorney yells objection. The judge says overruled. So the objection was overruled. So that means that the Assistant U.S. Attorney can proceed with asking the question, or can proceed with asking the question, and the witness can proceed with answering the question. So Jane Doe says that after a 2-day hotel night, again, she refers to these escapades as hotel nights. Miss Ventura, Cassie Ventura, referred to them as freak-offs, and they were characterized as freak-offs in the media. She said that after a 2-day hotel night, we'd go and do more on the yacht, but we never left, had to recuperate. I saw on social media he took a girlfriend there. So it appears Jane Doe was expecting to go on a luxurious trip. She couldn't do so because they spent 2 days involved in freak-off activities, and she had to recuperate. Now, I think a difference between the testimony for Miss Ventura and Miss Doe is that it took her some time to get over this. Now, we know Miss Ventura also testified about needing time to recuperate, but it appears that Miss Jane Doe would really go through when she was having these hotel nights. She needed time to recuperate. Sean Combs was not waiting for her. He was out allegedly, or according to her testimony. And so she thinks she's going on a yacht trip. She has to take time to recuperate from their 2-day hotel night. And then she goes on social media and she sees him with another woman. Again, apparently when they entered a relationship, she knew that she would not be the only one. But as she was going through these hotel nights, which she appears, based on her testimony, to detest, she really did not enjoy them at all. It seems from her testimony, she's recuperating from these hotel nights and he's on a yacht with another woman. And so she's like, yeah. And so Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey says, what did you write in your notes app? Jane said, I wrote, I don't want to come to New York to be treated like that HO 304. Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey says, why did you write this in your notes app? Jane says, I wasn't sure I was going to send it. So she apparently, for her, would voice her frustrations in the notes app. And sometimes she wouldn't say it, but she said, I just want to get my feelings out. And the Assistant U.S. Attorney asks, but did you send a version of it? Jane responds, yes. Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey says, what did Sean, Mr. Combs, reply? Jane says that he said it was just podcast talk. I said you took her to the Bahamas on a yacht. Not me. Like you promised after the hotel night. Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey asks, can you read your text? And Jane says, I quoted him on the podcast. You made Papa proud. And so again, although Ms. Doe testifies that she did not enjoy these nights, it seems she was willing to adore them. It seems that Mr. Combs made these promises. It seems like she was interested in kind of going on trips, and yacht trips, going to Bahamas. And she said he made her a promise, but it doesn't appear that he would take her on these trips. And she would get upset because she would, this is terrible. She would quite literally see him on social media with other women doing what he said he was going to do with her with other women. Like, imagine you go through the experiences that you hate, thinking, well, at least I'm going to be able to enjoy certain benefits, certain luxuries, him never fulfilling those things. And it's not like he's doing them. You're just opening up your social media app and seeing him doing them with someone else. That's crazy. But anyways, testimony continues. Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey said, you wrote, I don't want to feel obligated that you'll stop paying my rent. What did you mean? Jane replies, the guilty, trippy things he would say that I had to perform. Assistant U.S. Attorney, for how long have you felt that? Jane says, since I got the home in April 2023. And he's still paying her rent. It's June 9th, 2025. So she feels that he would say things that would make her feel guilty ever since he purchased the home for her in April 2023, and that she felt like she had to do these things, engage in these hotel nights, these debauchery nights, because he was paying the rent for the home she lived in. Okay, and so Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey says, play this exhibit. This is the audio. I don't know if you've heard the audio, but there's an audio going around where, this is a different audio. Combs' voice plays and it says, this is a true open relationship. Why do you have to make it a problem? Now I'm sick. So there's audio that gets played. And in the audio, Sean Combs is saying, this is a true open relationship. Why do you have to make it a problem? Now I'm sick. So it seems like she would get upset when she would see him on trips or doing nice things with other women on social media or otherwise, because she goes on to testify that allegedly he takes a trip with another woman with his family to Utah, and she gets upset about it and calls him a PDF because apparently the woman was under 21 but over the age of 18. I'm not sure who that is actually. But anyways, he's upset because he's like, I told you what it was from day one. I told you that I see other people. We can keep this going if you want, but you keep making a big deal about it. And it does appear like, based on her testimony, that if she had an issue, she would bring it to him. And it appears that for Mr. Combs' liking, she was complaining a little bit too much. He's like, you know what it is. You know what it is. And so they play the audio, and then Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey says, how did you reply to this voice message? And then Jane said, call me back. Then we had a FaceTime. He said all the things to calm me down. Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey says, what did you send Sean from the plane to New York? Jane Doe says, a photo of my outfit. Assistant U.S. Attorney asks, where were you planning to wear it? Jane says, to dinner. Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey asks, what did Sean send you? Jane Doe responds, he said, we're going to dinner. Assistant U.S. Attorney said, did you? Jane Doe responds, a late night lounge thing. So he said they were going to dinner. She showed him a picture of her outfit. He said they're going to dinner, and they ended up going to like a lounge type vibe. You know the vibes, a lounge type situation. And then Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey says, I'll read this for you. You wrote, I miss hard DICK. Jane responds, and I wrote, yes, I have my passport with me. So it appears she's telling him, I miss your male organ, and I have my passport with me. So it looks like sis wants to be, is letting him know I'm open to being flued out. I missed the yacht trip. I didn't make it to Bahamas, but we can definitely, I'm willing to be flued out. And then Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey asked, then what did you write? And Jane says, I wrote, you turned me on so crazy, can't wait. And Assistant U.S. Attorney asked, after the flight took off, Jane says, I got a message for Sean. And so this, I'm not going to hold you. This is what's a little problematic for these individuals who are in the relationships with Mr. Combs, because they say that he forced him to do things. They say that they didn't enjoy it, but then they send him text messages like, you turned me on so crazy, can't wait. I miss hard male organ. Like, it's very difficult to kind of receive this message of coercion if there are messages that are being sent to him like this. And I know that the defense team said early on in their opening statements that everyone had a motive. And I will say this, I said in my other videos, if you want to check out some videos that I've done regarding the trial, I thought the defense team did an excellent job of opening statements. And as an attorney, your job is to paint a picture and opening statements to provide a roadmap of what you believe the evidence is going to be and why it supports your theory of the case. And as an attorney, you need to be keeping front of mind whatever I promised would occur in my opening statement. I need to be making sure that I deliver on that. And I'm going to be honest, I think that the defense has been doing a great job of that. They were saying, listen, everyone's going to have a have a story. You have to understand what the motive of the story is. And what has been highlighted from Ms. Cassie Ventura's testimony and Ms. Jane Doe's testimony, it appears that these individuals wanted to be associated with Mr. Combs. Ms. Jane Doe has also testified that she brought up to Mr. Combs that she could be making a lot more money on OnlyFans. And Mr. Combs said he didn't like that idea. When someone is making you endure the things that Jane Doe went through for $10,000 a month to pay your rent, so that's just covering your housing expenses. That's not even covering your motor vehicle expenses, your gas expenses, your food expenses. You're just getting your housing expenses covered. And, this has not come out on testimony, but it's been said, that when he was in relationship with women, that he didn't really give out cash. He would probably take care of expenses, but he was never really handing out cash. So yes, your housing expenses are being paid, but, Jane Doe even testified today, I believe, and I'll go through that she threw up during an encounter. And so I'm just curious as to why you would endure this type of thing. And a lot of times, based on the testimony, again, because Jane Doe, she would be all right until like a trigger, like him showing up on social media with another woman. So it's kind of highlighting this picture of individuals were willing to endure certain things that they didn't enjoy because they wanted to be associated with Mr. Combs. For me, it honestly doesn't make sense. Literally, you could make more money on OnlyFans, exercise more autonomy, preserve more of your dignity for way more money, but you still made a decision to engage in this relationship with this person up until the time of his arrest. Now, she does testify that she did try to get on her own feet, that she did start OnlyFans again just to have a little bit of that financial independence. She did state that before she met Mr. Combs that she was, getting brand deals. And for me, that's something that if I'm the defense, I'm harping on that 100%. I'm bringing that on cross, and I'm going to definitely hit that in closing arguments or in summation. But that is a problem for the prosecution, in my humble opinion, that they're alleging coercion, but there are times where even in her testimony, she testified that they would take breaks and she would say it. And he'd be like, so we're breaking up? It wouldn't be like, you're not going anywhere, you're staying with me. It'd be like, so we're breaking up? And then she'd be like, oh, I just need a pause. But we'll continue. I understand there's layers to abusive relationships. I'm not denying that, but that is something that the prosecution has to grapple with, because through, again, Jane Doe's testimony and Ms. Ventura's testimony, I think that is an issue that they try to overcome, but I'm not sure if they've done that successfully. All right, so she continues. Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey said, what did Sean ask you? And Jane says, where Sly was. Remember, Sly was an entertainer. And then he asked, entertainment or a movie night? So entertainment is when they brought a gentleman over to engage in situations. And movie night is just when they viewed corn together. So he gave her a choice. He said, entertainment or movie night? Let me know. I'll get a hotel. Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey says, how did you react? Jane said, I felt upset and a little defeated. Again, she took a picture of his outfit, told him, I, miss you like crazy. I can't wait to see you, or you turn me on so crazy. Can't wait. She had her passport with her, and she's shown up to another hotel or debauchery night. So she's defeated and upset. Assistant U.S. Attorney says, what did you send next? Jane says, baby just got Wi-Fi again. Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey said, what did Sean write? Jane says, he said, check red phone. The other message he sent me. He said, I have a surprise for you, just one. So I'm not sure we got this through Ms. Ventura's testimony, but I don't recall Ms. Ventura having to engage in FOs with multiple individuals in one evening. But Miss Jane Doe had to. Miss Jane Doe had to. She said there would be occasions where she would have to engage in FO activities with more than one person, up to three individuals per session. And my understanding, or per hotel night or hotel nights, because remember these things go days into it. So I think she said up to 3, even 4 folks, which is crazy, respectfully. And she again says that she did not enjoy these things. It gave her anxiety. She says that she just started choosing the folks because there came a point where she couldn't deal with not knowing who she was going to encounter. So he says, I'll get a hotel. And then I guess the just one means she would only have to endure one entertainer that evening and then wouldn't have to do 3 folks. This is an aside. I'm sorry. I just feel like a pitch. Maybe I'm missing the picture. Y'all let me know. Am I missing the picture? The picture that the prosecution is trying to paint. I know that Miss Jane Doe testified that, she met this person in Miami. He was dating her friend before, and that she, informed Sean Combs that, the child of her father, the father of her child was a famous individual. I'm pretty sure Mr. Combs already knew that already. If you know, you know. And she said he didn't seem to have a problem with it. But I don't think she understands that there's a potential that she may have been used as a pawn in their ongoing beef. I'm not going to cite whom I believe to be the father of her child, again, because she's testifying anonymously, even though her identity is being leaked because folks are putting 1 plus 1 together. And it's, I'm being honest, very easy to do so, again, given just what we know based on popular culture and what we've observed in popular culture. But if you know someone hates your baby father's guts, at least in African American culture in the United States of America, it's not a good idea to date them. It's not a good idea to date them. You're just a pawn in their beef. And so I think that was a major mistake that she made. Of course, Diddy's going to tell you he doesn't care. But again, we never heard of other folks having to do deal with 3 entertainers in one evening. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Did we hear through other testimony through the trial that other folks were dealing with 3 entertainers in one evening, up to 4 on your birthday? He didn't care. Again, I think he kept a roster. I think he had favorites in the roster. He definitely would have one front-facing person in the roster, and then a couple of folks playing background. But this is crazy. I also am curious because they would do these nights for 2 nights and then he would leave and get with other girls. So was he literally doing this every day of the week? That's a question that I'm very curious about. Again, it's not like central to the case, but I'm just like, yo. Anyways, I think that she miscalculated and she should have understood that the father of your child is a very petty person who holds grudges and publicly lets people know that he does not play. He does not play. He does not play. So the fact that you thought Sean Combs was okay with who your baby's father was, you weren't thinking right. You weren't thinking right. You weren't thinking right. That is Sean Combs up. You are the mother of his child, and it's very likely that you were just a pawn in their beef. Let me know if you think the same in the comments, please. Do you think that Mr. Combs used Jane Doe as a pawn in his ongoing beef with the child's father? Let me know in the comments, please. So Sean Combs, right? It's just gonna be 1. Just 1 tonight, honey. Ain't gonna be 3 or 4, just 1. Crazy. An assistant U.S. attorney Comey says, what did you take that to mean? Jane Doe said that there'd be somebody new. Assistant U.S. attorney said, who? And Jane said, an entertainer. I hated it. So I'm not in the courtroom, but folks who have been in the courtroom have said that Miss Jane Doe is basically crying every 5 minutes. She can't even make it through her testimony. She's just up there sobbing. So it says here, Jane says that there'd be somebody new and she starts crying. Again, she really didn't based on her testimony, she really did not enjoy the fact that it was a new person, a new stranger, all up in her, on her, every encounter. She just really did not enjoy it. It appears from early on, versus Miss Ventura, who was like, I love him. This makes him happy. So in the beginning, I was willing to endure it, but as it progressed, I couldn't anymore. And, that she's just saying she could not take it. So Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey said, "What did Sean send you?" Jane responds, "A picture of the man." I rolled my eyes. I wrote back, "It's not loading. We are landing now." So she starts capping because she's like, "I'm over this. I don't want to do this." And then she says, "What did you send Sean?" The Assistant U.S. Attorney says, "What did you send Sean?" Jane Doe responded, "I suggested we go to Casa Cipriani, but I was driven to the Trump Hotel instead." I shouldn't say instead, but I was driven to the Trump Hotel. I put on my outfit. Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey said, "What happened that night?" Jane responds, "He was late. We went to that lounge. We bickered a bit. He was defensive, but we went to the room and Sly came. So he took her out for a little bit. They was arguing, but it was time to get ready to roll, okay? Because Sly, the entertainer, was in the room when they returned. And then the Assistant U.S. Attorney said, "What did you text to Sly?" Jane says, "I asked if he could come to New York. I felt I needed to make it up to Sean." So you're saying that you don't like these things, you hate it, you're fighting him about it, but then you're asking the entertainer if he can go to New York because you felt like you need to make it up to Sean. Again, I understand the complexities of relationships, but it's kind of undercutting your testimony that you hated these nights and you didn't enjoy them and you didn't want to do them, and Mr. Combs was forcing you to do it. But I'll continue. Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey said, "Did he come to the Trump Hotel and did you and he have relations in front of Sean?" And Assistant U.S. Attorney, and then Jane responded, "Yes." The Assistant U.S. Attorney said, "After that New York trip, where did you next see Mr. Combs or Sean?" She says here. Jane says, "In Miami at a hotel." And then the Assistant U.S. Attorney asked, "Did you two take these pictures?" Now they showed the picture to her, but it was not shown to the folks in the public gallery. And then she said, "Yes." She says, "We had Sly in Miami as well. Then I went back to LA. We had an argument there." And then the Assistant U.S. Attorney says, "Tell us why." And Jane says, "He wanted to set up a party. He wanted me to reach out to entertainers. I noticed something online that he was with an ex-girlfriend of his. I was furious." So again, Jane Doe, I felt like she was a strong witness in the beginning, to be honest. But it's like, again, Jane Doe, you don't have a problem until you see him with another shorty online. That's something that the defense is definitely going to attack. She's saying he wanted to set up a party. He wanted me to reach out to entertainers. I noticed something online that he was with an ex-girlfriend of his. I was furious. So maybe it's like she's checking too. Like, he's telling me to do all these things. Let me see what he's doing. But she's like, he wanted to set up a party. He wanted me to reach out to entertainers. I noticed something online that he was with an ex-girlfriend of his. I was furious. So she, even though she knows she's in an open relationship, every time she sees him, or per her testimony today on June 9th, it appears that the instances that she sees him with other individuals publicly on social media, that upsets her. Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey says, "Did you ever speak with any of these other women?" Jane replies, "No, I found out on the photo app, Instagram." I shouldn't say photo app. Sorry, on Instagram. Assistant U.S. Attorney said, "These text messages, October 15th, 2023. Please read what you wrote." Jane, "I text, you got that girl next to you. Her BS is already starting." The Assistant U.S. Attorney says, "Meaning drama." Jane says, "I told Sean, introduce her to Pete." So she gets upset. He goes, "Oh, you got that girl next to you. Her BS is already starting. She's talking about drama." And then she tells Sean, "Introduce her to P." And then AUSA Comey says, "Who?" Jane says, "Paul, one of the entertainers." So she's basically like, "All right, you hugged up with her. Why don't you introduce her to these entertainers? Why don't you have her doing what you have me doing?" Basically, right? Then she wrote, "I am not a corn star. These experiences are desensitizing relations for me." An Assistant U.S. Attorney asked and here on October 16, 2023, the same fight. Please read these. That's interesting. She characterized it as a fight, but okay. They let that in. Jane, I wrote, I don't want to be smashed in these rooms. She continues with her testimony. I felt there was more pressure on me than the others. There was an imbalance. I had to earn basic things for my romance, love and romance. He was giving it to others. He was clearly capable of it. Beloved, your child's father is up, honey. Again, I think you were a pawn. Unfortunately, you weren't hip and didn't recognize that. But again, let that be a lesson. No shade. I understand she went through a lot, but I'm going to say that again. I think that she does not recognize that Mr. Combs probably used her as a pawn in the ongoing beef that he has with the child of her father's child. Jane wrote, I wrote, it's been 3 years of me having to smash strangers. And so he wrote, so we're breaking up. So we're breaking up. Assistant U.S. Attorney says, is that what you were proposing? Jane says no. So again, this is a bit problematic for me. If you don't like this, you're being coerced, there's an imbalance, you don't think it's fair. If he asks, so we're breaking up, why are you saying no, that's not what you were proposing? Why do you want to still be in a relationship with this person? Why are you still continuing to deal with this person? Particularly when he presents opportunities for you to gracefully exit and bow out. Why are you still choosing to continue to be with him? She said, no, I wrote, I need a break spiritually. Sob, starts crying. Assistant U.S. Attorney asks, what did you write next? Jane says, I wrote, Smex is sacred to me. Jane, I wrote, you always push me to do more and more. That's crazy. I said, I need time to myself. I said, Mr. Combs' attorney asked for sidebar. The judge grants the sidebar. So they approach sidebars when they approach the judge and they discuss certain things with the judge outside of the hearing of the jury. They had a break. Mr. Combs is talking to his attorney. The judge asks everyone to be seated. They bring Miss Jane Doe back. Miss Doe walks back up, past Mr. Combs' table as he passes a note to his lawyer, Alexandra Shapiro. Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey says, what did Sean write to you? Jane says, he wrote, I want to spend the day with you. Excuse me, this individual. Sorry. I want to spend the day with you. I wrote back, you make it crystal clear exactly what you want me for. Okay, so maybe she saw it. She saw that, she wasn't going to get the experience that she wanted, that he just used her for these hotel nights, these debauchery nights. She continues, you're going to spend the day love bombing me. And the Assistant U.S. Attorney asks, what did you mean? And Jane responds, Sean is very love bombing. This corroborates other reports that we've heard regarding his relationship with Miss Cassie Ventura, that he would, she wouldn't endure abuse and at his hands, allegedly. And then he would take her shopping the next day. Shine, also known as Mr. What's his real name? Barris, I want to say, but I'm not sure. I can't recall at this time. Would, said that he asked, did he essentially to kind of compensate him for his unjust or imprisonment, and he shot him a lowball offer, and he said, I have observed this individual taking Ms. Ventura on shopping sprees after an incident and spending $500,000 on her. And him, I think he offered him something like maybe 10K, 50K. I think it was more 50K. And so he was offended. So again, this corroborates reports that other people have said that he tends to, spend lavishly after incidents with other folks. Or in the case of Ms. Ventura, after alleged abuse. And Jane responds, I said, I'm not just an animal people can smash on, I should say. He said, you're crazy. Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey said, how often did he call you crazy? Jane says, often. I said, you want to have me perform fellatio so you can jet off with Gina. And I'm taking this to assume that she's referring to Gina Quinn. So Cassie was allegedly jealous of Gina per her testimony. And it looks like Jane was also not too pleased with his relationship with Miss Gina Quinn. And she said, I said, I'm drained. He said, I'll leave you alone. Very interesting. I'll leave you alone. And Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey says in the next message, does he use your true name? Jane says yes. Assistant U.S. Attorney, and did he say that's my house too? Jane said he does. He wrote, I'm coming over. You got to let me in. You got to let me in or not. Is your baby there? Are you going to let me in our house again and again? Sean wrote to me, I'm so stressed. I'm corny with an H, shaking my head. Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey says, what does SMH? Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey said, asks, what does SMH mean? Jane replies, shaking my head. He said his knees weren't good. I said I was hitting up my mom. She said taking bone supplements is key. Assistant U.S. Attorney asked, then you saw Sean? Jane says yes. Lord. Jane replies, we had the sobriety party at the hotel. First, I went to a concert. I stayed with his security. With the security, Jonathan, I went to the store for supplies for the hotel night. Sean was in the hotel waiting. He called me female dog. What the F word is taking so long? Jane continues, I got there. His assistant said, you don't deserve to be called a female dog. Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey asked at L'Ermitage, what happened? Jane responded, I didn't want to take rugs. Assistant U.S. Attorney asks, who was the first entertainer? Child, the first. Jane responds, Rico, then Paul, then Anton, then I throw up. Okay, so she testified today that she threw up after having to engage in FO activities with 3 separate individuals. Jane says, continue. Sean said, good, you threw up. Now you'll feel better. Then I had Smex with Anton. I felt terrible. Jeez Louise. It's crazy. Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey. Whose text is this? Jane. Mine. I wrote, baby, I love you. Do you think you could put something in my hotel? Assistant U.S. Attorney asked, did Sean respond? Jane replies, no. Jane continues, I needed furniture for the house. I wrote, you weren't too busy to make sure Chelsea was ready in D.C. Assistant U.S. Attorney asked to play the voice note. Sean Combs' voice, it says, so essentially she's asking these questions to lay the foundation to get this voice note into evidence, or at least play it out loud for the jury so that it can get into evidence. And he says in this voice note, or whatever this is, it's his voice playing, it's a voice note. It says, I don't know where the F Chelsea is. I ain't with no BITCHGS is. Leave me the F alone, I'm single. Sorry, y'all, this is crazy. Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey says, what frustrations did you feel? Jane, not being heard about how I felt about the hotel nights. AUSA, did you use names for the other women? Jane, yes, it was misdirected anger. I asked, what does the house have to do with what I'm saying? Jane, I wrote, I'm not Gina or Cassie. I'm not Jane. Jane, I wrote, I'm not Gina or Cassie. I'm just going to pause there because I don't know if you can separate yourself, sis. I don't know if you can separate yourself. Looks like you're giving very much them. Looks like you're giving very much them. And then she said when she saw Cassie's lawsuit, she felt kind of sick, or she felt some type of way because it was basically what she was going through. So she said it was misdirected anger, but anyways, Jane, I wrote, I'm not Gina or Cassie. Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey said, were you telling Sean you were going to speak out about your relationship? His attorney objects. The judge sustains it. So basically, he can't answer that question. Assistant U.S. Attorney, please read. Did you reference your child? Jane responds, yes, I said you got me effed up. I said, just complete what he promised about, I said, just complete what he promised about the 2 years about the home. I said, don't contact me. So I believe what she's referencing when she says just complete what you promised about the 2 years. She said that they entered a love contract because she felt like she was engaging in all these hotel night and debauchery night activities, and she wasn't really getting nothing for it. So they came up with a love contract where essentially I believe that she wanted to live in a nicer space. And so she moved into a space that was about $10,000 a month. And Mr. Combs was responsible for paying that amount. And he paid that amount. He's paying that amount even now as we speak. So she's saying just complete what he promised about the 2 years, about the home. I believe that's what she's referencing. I said, don't contact me. Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey said, what did he say in response? Jane says, he said, I'm super clear now. I said, you had me on constant pins and needles. Now I'm sick. Leave me alone. So she's saying she was constantly like uneasy, almost anxious in a sense, because he allegedly was threatening to discontinue providing financially for her housing. Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey said, does the next message reference a prior relationship you had? Jane says, yes. Then he says, I told you were crazy. He said, you took it too far, baby girl. You'll see. He was threatening me about the rent, that we don't need to do anything we don't want. So I guess he's saying you ain't got to do what you don't want to do, and I don't have to do what I don't want to do. It just means it appears she's kind of implying that he's saying, if you don't want to continue hotel nights and debauchery nights, then I ain't gonna pay your rent no more. Jane responds, I wrote, you're mad at me about a grown ASS man? Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey says, stop right there. Was this referring to your prior relationship? Jane wrote, yes. I wrote, you wasted my time in this toxic ASS relationship. Assistant U.S. Attorney asked, did you then refer to your previous relationship? And she answers, yes. It came up, beloved, because again, Jane continues, you invited me to New York to pair me up with some random man, any MFer, for your own sick sexual desire. Well, sexual, and she stops there. Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey asks, what were you talking about? Jane responds, the 2 men I had chose for myself, Sly and Anton. Sean kept trying to say I chose them, that I wanted it. And Jane continues, I wrote, you want to gaslight me? Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey says, what did you mean? Jane says, he wanted me to believe I had wanted these things. Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey asks, what else did Sean text you? Jane says, he said, you and me don't have no beef. I said, you created all this evil inside of me. It's deep. Jane continues, I wrote to him, I regret everything. All this toxic-ish, which overran my life. He said, you are burning a bridge that you're going to need tomorrow. Ooh, what does that mean? Is that a threat? Allegedly. Assistant U.S. Attorney asks, what did you write? Jane, I wrote, I don't trust you. I don't think he ever trusted her, to be honest. So they both probably didn't trust each other. He said, 10 hours ago, you loved me, not this. Jane, he wrote, it's a free country. I'm an adult and you're an adult. You are writing a whole book about what you hate about me. We both made promises that we didn't keep. If you don't want to talk to me, there's nothing I can do. Again, this undercuts the coercion and demonstrates that maybe for some reason this individual thought that he wasn't forcing anybody to do anything. We'll see how the defense handles that on cross-examination tomorrow. Assistant U.S. Attorney, did you get the phone? Yes. Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey, what did you write here? Jane, I said you knew I would finish strong. I don't know what that means. Pep talks to keep me performing. I know I was consenting. That's going to be problematic, and the defense is going to have a field day with that on cross-examination and in closing arguments. They're gonna repeat. They're gonna say, "You heard Jane Doe. She said, I know I was consenting." Like you said, you didn't know I didn't want it. That's like you said. You didn't know I didn't want it. This is my truth. I love you very much. I need to take a pause. It's interesting that she always framed it as a pause and not, I don't want to be with you anymore. She always frames it as, I need to take a break. I don't know if that's how she felt comfortable cutting things off, but she phrases like she said before she needed to take a break spiritually. Now here it's, I need to take a pause. That's interesting. I'm not sure. Maybe that's kind of like an easier way for her to let go of things. And then Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey says, why did you say I know I was consenting? Of course, she has to ask her about that because that's problematic for the prosecution. Jane says, I picked up the word from him. Mm, mm, mm. I'm not sure. That sounds like you guys tried to find a way to, because that's the evidence, right? You can't change it. That's what she texted him. So it sounds like you're figuring a way to make that not look so bad. We'll see. I picked up the word from him. He said if anyone saw these videos, they'd say you wanted it. Assistant U.S. Attorney, was that true, Jane? This is the part. This is the part that gets me. I don't know what he did to these women. Because even Miss Ventura, when she testified, did you regret anything? I have no regrets. I mean, everyone's different and processes differently. But when Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey asked, was that true, Jane? Jane says, I'm still trying to figure that out. That's complex. And that's complex. And again, I'm pretty sure the defense is going to try to explore that tomorrow on cross-examination. So Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey continues, what did you see in the videos? Jane responds, I was in the clouds. She doesn't use that word, but I'm saying I was in the clouds. I was just following a pattern, performing. So she says that it was a performance, and she says that earlier too in the text. You knew I would finish strong pep talks to keep me performing. Assistant U.S. Attorney says, exhibit, please read it. Jane responds, it's from my notes. I wrote, I'm having PTSD from these nights. That's deep. And that's also similar to Ms. Ventura's testimony and experience. Assistant U.S. Attorney says, why in your notes app? Jane says, get my feelings out. So it seems that she would express herself a lot through writing things down in her notes app, even if she felt like she couldn't verbally express it to Mr. Combs. It seems like it was kind of therapeutic for her in a sense. Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey, did you see Sean that day? Yes, at his home. Again, so this is what's kind of bring up problems for the prosecution is that she's going to his home the next day. She's saying or expressing that he comforted her. She says, I was comforted by him. I was able to talk about the pain I was feeling. He was hugging me. So you're trying to paint this individual as a monster, but it's like he's a monster on one hand, but on the other hand, he's able to comfort these women. These women want to be with him, even when given opportunity to leave, and they keep going back. And you're saying that he was hugging you and he was comforting you. That's interesting. Again, I'm curious to see how the defense will handle it tomorrow in cross-examination. The assistant U.S. attorney continues and asks, what are these? Jane responds, photos I told of us in his master bathroom. I felt, photos, I think she meant I took of us in his master bathroom. Or I think the person typing this meant to say I took of us in his master bathroom. Side, I've heard things about this guy's bathroom. That apparently it's a very big space, and like a lot of folks have met with him in that bathroom. I felt he understood me in this moment. Jane continues, he had a Halloween video shoot. That was nice, but his birthday was approaching and I felt nervous. He'd want to party hard, but he spent his birthday with his family. I got him a mobile television. We had these things called movie nights, our videos. So I was trying to figure out, I'm like, there's no way, this is an aside. I was like, there's no way Sean Combs is filming freak offs or hotel nights, debauchery nights, whatever it may be. You're engaging in these 2 to 3 days a week, 3 to 4 days a week, and recording them. When will he have the time to watch these videos? Honestly, after Ms. Ventura's testimony, I didn't think he watched these videos. I think he just recorded them. But apparently he watched the videos because as Miss Jane Doe was testifying, they had what was called movie nights, and movie nights would be when they reviewed porn or their own videos of hotel nights and debauchery nights, which is crazy. But she said his birthday was approaching. He'd want to party hard, but he spent his birthday with his family. I got him a mobile television. We had these thing called movie nights, our videos. So she gets him a mobile TV so they can view their movie nights. And then she continues, I felt this TV could substitute for the entertainer. Then Cassie's lawsuit came out. It was everywhere on social media. I think I fainted. Assistant Comey asks why. Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey asks why. Jane, because, begins sobbing, there were 3 pages that were harrowing what I was experiencing. Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey asks, did you screenshot those pages? Jane responds, yes. Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey asks, do you recognize this? Jane responds, it's Cassie's lawsuit, filed November 16, 2023. Assistant U.S. Attorney asks, had you met Cassie? Jane responds, in 2015, a fashion show and celebration for Sean. That's the only time I met Cassie. Jane continues, I was reading these, and I'm just saying in 2015, they weren't together yet. I think Jane Doe testified they were together from 2021 to 2024. But in 2015, she met Cassie, she's saying, at a fashion show and celebration for Sean. Jane continues, I was reading these pages and it felt like a nightmare. I had a lot of sympathy for this because Attorney Combs' attorney objects, and the judge responds, ask a new question, and the assistant U.S. attorney asks, how did you react? Jane responds like, I can't believe I'm reading my own story. That's not good. That's not good for the defense, in my opinion. Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey responds, read your messages the day after Cassie's lawsuit. Jane responds, 4 in one night, and now... I'm sorry, I have to read this, y'all. Sorry. 4 in one night, and now I'm going to the doctor. So I think she's referring to having to engage with 4 entertainers in one night, and she was going to the doctor, perhaps to be checked to make sure that she did not contract anything. And then Assistant U.S. Attorney asked, this is again me just trying to figure out what she meant by that. Assistant U.S. Attorney asked, then 3 days later, Jane responds, I feel like I'm reading my own sexual trauma. God finally woke me up about this cycle. You gaslit me. So when she realized that she wasn't the only one going through it, when she realized that Cassie was going through it too, she said, wow, this is a cycle. And she says to him, you gaslit me. Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey says, we're going to play some audio with your true name redacted. So they played some audio. He uses her real name. They're redacting it. Show the full transcript to the jury. So the jury's getting a written transcript of what the audio says. Loud and scratchy audio played. Sean Combs saying, I love you. You know what I'm saying. I'm trying to stop all this madness. Interesting. Jane responds, I don't know. Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey says, or asks, did you know you were being recorded? Jane responds, no. More audio, Jane saying, who's there when I close my eyes and I have these effed up things in my head? It doesn't say effed up, but it says effed things in my head. Assistant U.S. Attorney says, play to 3 minutes and 45 seconds. Sean Combs' voice, I'm trying to be there for you. You know what I'm saying? He was trying to be there for her. Okay, I'm just effed up right now. Sean Combs asks, are you recording me? Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey asks, Jane, were you recording him? Jane responds, absolutely not. 2 people in the conversation. Jane Doe says it wasn't her recording. So who was recording? More audio. Sean Combs' voice. What you did is not right. You know what I'm saying? I can't talk on this phone. I don't know what the F is going on. I need you to support. You got me that video thing. What did that mean? Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey asks. Jane responds, the mobile TV I got him. Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey says, Your Honor, this might be a good place to break. The judge says, okay, jurors, you may go. The jurors leave. The judge asked Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey, how much longer are they going to take with Miss Jane Doe? And then Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey responds, I'm confident I'll finish today. It may be the end of today, it may be the end of the day, but today. All right. So they go on a break. Sorry, I'm trying to continue. They go on a break, and Jane says, something happens. Jane says, I was commenting about the girlfriend of another rapper. I said, she is so beautiful. And Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey said, was this rapper an old friend of yours? Jane says, yes, I was flown to Las Vegas. There was a birthday party, and we went to a club where there are exotic dancers, and I recognized Anton. Remember, Anton is one of the entertainers. Okay, so she ends up going somewhere with a friend of hers who is dating a rapper, and she goes to a club with exotic dancers, and she sees Anton there. All right, give me a second, guys. I'm going to continue reading, but I got to find. They got me dragging a puzzle, y'all. To stand. Oh, they said my live is going to end soon. So, what do you guys think so far? I don't know. I think the defense is going to do a good job, or should I say good job? Let me strike that, as they would say, strike that. I think that there are a lot of points that the defense is going to harp on tomorrow on cross-examination. They're going to have to definitely paint a picture that this was not coercive. I think Jane Doe did a really good job of being honest, if that makes sense. I think that may also be due to the fact that their relationship was shorter, and also she's a little older. Ms. Ventura got involved with Mr. Combs when she was really young. Although there was illegal rug use in this situation, I think it was characterized differently because through the testimony that came out through Miss Ventura and a lot of her other friends, I should say, she was engaging in an illegal rug use with or without Mr. Combs. And it seems like the illegal rug use that she was engaging with Mr. Combs was way more excessive than the rug use that Miss Jane Doe was engaging in. Honestly, it looks like he was forcing her to take these rugs to deal with the hotel nights and debauchery nights. That's definitely a bad fact. Again, I think from my perspective, I find her a little bit credible, but then it's a question of what is her motive, given all these opportunities to discontinue the relationship and disengage with the relationship. You continue to engage in the relationship. You've described him as comforting you and hugging you. I need to actually continue this, but I may do that another time because she does describe a violent incident with Mr. Combs. And so I think that's another distinction between Miss Jane Doe's relationship with Mr. Combs and Miss Ventura's relationship with Mr. Combs. Violence was pervasive in the relationship with Miss Ventura and Mr. Combs, and not as pervasive in the relationship with Miss Jane Doe and Mr. Combs. And again, I'm not sure if that's due to the length of the relationship. She does describe a very violent incident, but unfortunately, and I think this is what Mr. Combs says, and that the defense will probably highlight, she began throwing things at him. I do not agree with his response. I think he took his response way too far, and he did get extremely violent with her, again, based on her testimony. But she also allegedly, well, she's testified to taking his head and smashing it into a marble countertop, I believe, and throwing candles and getting violent. And he responded. It was excessive. It was terrible. And this is crazy. I'm sorry, just thinking about it. Like, he allegedly physically assaulted her and then called like a entertainer to come after that and told her to get dressed and put makeup on her physical, like physical cuts. I'm not sure if it was a cut or if it was a bruise or whatever it was, but she was physically injured. So let me just characterize in that way. In her alleged physical injuries, he told her to cover up with makeup and then engage with an entertainer. That is wild. After allegedly abusing someone and then right away calling a S worker for her to engage with. That's like wild. But again, you also heard him, Miss Ventura's testimony, stating that Mr. Combs physically injured her, abused her as well, her having physical injuries, and him telling her she had to put on makeup to continue to engage in these FOs or freak offs. And then also her being holed up in a hotel for a whole week to heal from the alleged injuries that he caused her. So really disturbing behavior, to be honest. And I don't know how the defense is going to get around that. I know that they have in their opening statement accepted the bad facts. They have acknowledged that his relationships were played with domestic violence. But again, you're kind of hearing a similar story on Miss Jane Doe's behalf. And although it's not as frequent, there are similarities pulling, her by her hair. Just terrible, terrible behavior and terrible abuse being suffered by Miss Jane Doe. So she did testify to that. I may continue with that in another video because I'm trying to pull it up. But what's also interesting, and maybe I can just summarize versus reading through it line by line. She also testified that when the video came out on CNN of that incident at the Intercontinental Hotel involving him and Ms. Ventura came out, she actually advised him on the statement. Y'all, get your PR team together. Apparently, he huddled up with his family to figure out what to say. He crafted an apology. He showed her a draft. You guys saw that apology that, in my opinion, I think was effective and didn't think was too sincere. But anyways, I didn't think that apology or statement was good or helpful for him. It didn't seem sincere because he categorically denied that those types of actions or behaviors took place in the relationship. And then when he was caught in 4K, and he knew the video was out there because he paid for it not to get released, allegedly. So when he got caught in 4K, then it was, I'm so sorry, I was in a dark space in my life and I went through therapy, and it just didn't seem sincere. Anyways, I think he should have consulted with a publicist. I'm not sure if he did or if he didn't. I don't know. But Miss Jane Doe says that he and his family convened. She mentions his sons were part of that convening to figure out what an appropriate response would be. So I guess a lot of folks were thinking that, perhaps the sons were not aware of certain things, or, were not really aware of their father's, quote unquote behaviors, but it seems like they were involved in the crafting of his response to that video being leaked or published by CNN. And so she says that he showed her a draft. She read it. She said, he addressed Miss Ventura by name in that draft. She felt it was heartfelt and she thought it was good. So people can say, anyways, I'm not even gonna get into that. I'm not even getting into that. So, she kind of gave us a sneak peek into kind of what was going on behind the scenes as concerns Mr. Combs' response to the video being published by CNN. She later talked to Mr. Combs about that video one-on-one, and she asked him about it, I guess, or they talked about it, and Miss Jane Doe says that his response was that Miss Ventura hit him too. Then he was told that his, I think, former chief of staff at this point, Christina Khartoum, I believe, was coming, and she had to go into another room. She did, and then she went back to LA or Los Angeles. So, guys, if this is happening, you need to get the professionals in it. I know these folks know you. I'm not sure what it was, but I think that a better statement could have been issued if a publicist was involved. Again, I'm not sure if a publicist was not involved, but it seems based on Ms. Jane Doe's testimony that that's not what occurred. So he was physically violent towards her. He was upset because she got money from somebody called Bear. Bear gave her $9,000 allegedly and said, hey, just in case you need this, we can work together, etc., etc. Mr. Combs found out. He got mad. Mr. Combs was also mad that she saw Anton at that little trip she took with her friend and thought that Miss Jane Doe was seeing that entertainer behind his back, which is crazy. So then you call him to come after you just finish beating her, and then you question her about it after you make her perform fellatio, allegedly. Weird. Um, that's problematic. So the defense will have to work to explain some of these problematic behaviors. And I don't know if again they're gonna accept that there was violence that went on. I think their narrative is going to be that it was a two-way street, as Mr. Combs told Ms. Doe here. Um, who knows how they're going to characterize that, but I think they're going to say there was violence in the relationships and the violence were perpetrated by both parties and it was not one-sided. Um, let's see. We found out that she has an attorney for this case. The attorney came about, we find out that the person that she trusted, I think ATL, was it ATL or Mr. Cabral, one of the entertainers that she selected, alleges, or she testified that Mr. Cabral said that Mr. Combs had recorded one of their sessions on his phone. And so he somehow, some way, Miss Jane Doe finds out that he's alleging he's gonna leak this tape little by little. And I think it's after the whole Cassie lawsuit had hit. And so he reached out to her and she's like, so how much do you want? Like, what are you asking for? Basically trying to prevent the video from being linked because, she's going to be exposed as well. So she says he asked for $10,000. And then at that moment, Mr. Combs reportedly through Miss Jane Doe's testimony says that he stated that they need to contain this. And then he obtained a lawyer for Miss Joy. And so essentially, the entertainer who had the video did end up selling it, but they were able to purchase it from the individual, the media outlet that he sold it to prevent that video from being exposed. And so Sean Combs paid for her lawyer. Then, as I stated, individuals have reported that her attorney is in the courtroom throughout her testimony and even brought up concerns regarding the leaking of her identity, I believe. Again, this is reportedly, I believe, to the court. And Mr. Combs is paying for her attorney. Even now. I don't know. As a juror, he's paying for your rent up until now. You realize that you were doing a lot in the relationship and felt like you weren't getting as much back. So you had him enter into a contract to pay your rent for 2 years, reportedly, per your testimony. He's paying your rent now from jail. He's paying for your attorney from jail. That is not super helpful. That was shocking and surprising to me. And again, I know his team's going to eat it up. They're going to eat it up. Remember, I don't know if y'all recall when Mr. Robert Kelly was going through it. He said, I need help. I need help not being so, to paraphrase, I need help not being so generous hearted to other folks because I'm too giving and people take advantage of that. Mr. Combs is still paying bills, y'all, and attorney's fees for the folks from behind bars. That's crazy. And the prosecution finished their testimony today on that note. And I'm not sure if they're just saying that to say, yes, she testified, yes, she's crying, but she may have some loyalty still to Mr. Sean Combs because he's paying for her expenses till this day, or if they're just bringing that up to kind of cut the wind from the defense team's sail. Who knows? But that was very shocking to me that he is still paying her rent that came up yesterday and paying for her legal counsel. That was a little crazy to me. It was also reported that, I don't know if y'all know or are aware, when Mr. Combs got arrested, he was supposed to get arrested the next day. Like when he got arrested in connection with this case, he was going to surrender himself. And he was supposed to surrender himself the next day, but the feds actually came in and arrested him the day prior, which is a little crazy. If someone schedules surrender through their attorneys and you arrest them before then, that's crazy. But allegedly, the room appeared to be set up to have a FO. So it appears that Mr. Combs was having these escapades up until the time of his arrest. And some folk thought that it might have been Miss Jane Doe, but it was not Miss Jane Doe. I think more folks thought it was probably Miss Wynn, allegedly, but that remains to be seen. Again, I think she was supposed to testify, and I don't think they're able to locate her to do that. Uh, I think that's it. Let me know what y'all think in the comments. Let me know what y'all thoughts are. How you think this case is going to go? Again, there's 8 gentlemen on the jury and 4 women. He's being tried by a jury of his peers, and so those are the folks who are going to make the decision. There's been a lot of talk about whether or not the elements of the RICO charge have been met, or the elements of the other charges have been met. We're kind of we're kind of getting like this story, right? But the story has to fit within the elements of the charges, and the charges have to be proved beyond a reasonable doubt, right? So I'm not sure how much longer. I'm curious to see how much longer the prosecution has. I believe the trial's been going on for 4 weeks plus, and it's anticipated to be an 8-week trial. We'll see who the defense is going to bring forward as witnesses. We'll see what cross-examination is going to look like tomorrow. I'm very curious to see how they're going to handle Miss Jane Doe's testimony. I do feel bad for folks who are testifying under pseudonyms, but the public is figuring out the identity anyways. That happened with the person testifying under the pseudonym Mia. People were trying to identify who she may have been. Jane Doe, people are leaking her identity as well. I think it's sad that folks testify under pseudonyms just because the court wants to protect the identity. Like, kind of the rationale behind it is the court wants to protect the identity of victims or alleged victims, and encourage them coming forward and cooperating in cases like these. And one of the measures that, especially in assault cases, and one of the measures that they do to encourage that is having these individuals testify under pseudonyms, but it kind of defeats the purpose if the public is able to identify the person anyways. Again, this is a very public figure who's had a public life for over 20 years. Individuals attached to him have been seen with him publicly and have been following his very public life for a long time. So people are able to connect the dots. So my heart does go out to these individuals who are testifying under pseudonyms because they have to live their lives. They may have children. And it's just sad that they're being exposed in this way. So there's that. But in this day and age where there's so much access to information, and information's easily spread through social media, yeah, it's just sad. And I hope they do a better job of protecting folks' identity, or attempting to. Um, and I think that if they omitted certain lines of questioning, they would have been able to do that respectfully. Folks were still going to conjecture, but I have a strong feeling of who Miss Jane Doe is, and a lot of folks do too. So, anyways, we'll see what else the government calls. Let me see if there's anything else I missed. Um, yeah, that's it. Give a follow if you want more updates, if you want more feedback, if you want more commentary regarding this case. This case is really taking up a lot of. I had to honestly step back a little bit because I was like, I'm trying to not get too like dragged into this because it can be a lot, particularly the first few weeks of the trial, particularly with Miss Ventura's testimony. But it is interesting to see it play out. It is interesting to kind of um, hear the testimony and see the legal issues, and see how um, both sides are working to do their job, and present the case on the side of the government, and then defend their client from the defense side. So I will try to cut clips from this live and put it up on social media. I will try to do shorter clips. Like, I was doing that at first, but it's just so much happening. There's so much happening with this trial, and it's happening and moving quickly. And I do have a day job. So by the time I get to it, it's kind of too late. So I was like, you know what? It may be helpful just to go through the testimony with y'all live. Let me know if you like that. And then cut up the clips later. We'll see how that goes. So I'm also on YouTube. Hopefully I can cut this and splice it on YouTube. I can definitely post it up on YouTube. This is my first time going live on TikTok. Yay. And I enjoyed it, actually. But I wonder, I don't think I can save this live on TikTok. So I'll have to take the footage from YouTube and post it on that platform separately. All right. I hope everyone has a great evening. I can't believe it's 11 o'clock. I hope everyone has a great evening. I hope you're following the case, but I also hope you're taking care of your mental. I know this case is very triggering for a lot of folks. I don't know if you know what the stats are, but 1 in 3, I can't speak for male stats, but 1 in 3 women are survivors of S assault. So I know this could be very triggering for folks. So do what you need to do, protect your mental health. Definitely take a step back and yeah, just create space and boundaries and don't engage with every single video. I have to skip a lot. I typically like to follow like the legal commentary or folks who are actually on the ground there. It's a lot, and you don't want to be consuming that 24/7. Give yourself space, take care of yourself, give yourself to breathe. If you are in a situation where you are facing abuse of any kind, whether that be physical, sexual, emotional, financial, please know that there are resources to help you. Send me a DM and I will send you resources to help you, but you don't have to stay in any situation that you don't want to be in. And ladies, value yourselves. You are worth more. And you do not have to deal with ludicrous behavior for 10K. You are worth more than that. I know it's not easy, but yeah, don't value yourself and don't stay in situations that you don't need to be in. All right, that's my TED Talk. Have a good night. Thanks for joining. Bye. All right. I want to make sure I save this first. No, I can share the screen. I hope I can save my life. I want to save my life.